Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and I'm joined today by Sam. We're diving into a topic that's going to reshape how European enterprises operate over the next couple of years: the EU AI Act Governance and Enterprise Compliance Readiness for 2026. Sam, this is a big deal, right? August 2nd, 2026. That's when mandatory enforcement kicks in across the entire EU.
Absolutely, Alex. And what makes this particularly urgent is that we're not talking about theoretical compliance here. Organizations in Rotterdam, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, they're operating in logistics, financial services, manufacturing, sectors where AI is already deeply embedded in decision-making. The transition from voluntary frameworks to mandatory enforcement is happening fast, and most enterprises aren't ready.
Let's unpack that. When you say most enterprises aren't ready, what's the current state? Do we have data on that?
Yes, and it's sobering. According to a 2024 Statista survey, 73% of European enterprises report inadequate governance structures to meet emerging AI regulations. Think about that number, nearly 3/4. And it gets worse when you look at high-risk AI systems specifically. Forrester's research shows that 64% of Fortune 500 companies operating in Europe are already deploying AI in at least 2 high-risk categories, yet only 38% have established comprehensive governance frameworks. So you've got this massive gap between deployment and governance readiness.
That's a huge gap. So what exactly qualifies as high risk under the EU AI Act? I think a lot of listeners might not realize how broad that definition is.
The EU AI Act identifies 8 categories of high-risk systems, and they're comprehensive: biometric identification, facial recognition, fingerprinting, critical infrastructure management, think power grids, water systems, but also things like educational access determination and employment decisions. That last one is particularly relevant for Rotterdam and other European business hubs because hiring AI systems are already everywhere, and they're now going to face strict compliance requirements around algorithmic transparency and human oversight.
So we're not just talking about compliance burden, we're talking about redesigning how these systems operate. Let me shift gears a bit, though, because there's another major evolution happening simultaneously: the rise of agentic AI. Can you explain what that means in practical terms?
Great question, because this is where the real complexity emerges. Agentic AI is fundamentally different from traditional chatbots or AI assistants. Traditional systems, they respond to user queries. You ask them something, they give you an answer. Agentic AI systems operate autonomously. They execute multi-step tasks without human intervention at each step. A procurement agent might negotiate contracts with vendors. A code generation agent might push updates directly to your repository. A customer service agent might resolve disputes and refund customers all on its own.
That's a huge difference. And the efficiency gains must be substantial, right?
They absolutely are. McKinsey's 2024 State of AI report found that 42% of enterprises globally have deployed or are actively piloting agentic AI systems. That's more than double the 18% from 2023. And the numbers are compelling. Autonomous code generation is reducing development cycles by 30 to 40%. Procurement agents are optimizing vendor negotiations by 15 to 20%. And customer service agents are handling about 60% of inquiries autonomously. These aren't marginal improvements, they're transformative.
But I'm sensing a but coming, Sam. If these systems are so efficient, what's the governance challenge?
Exactly. The autonomy itself is the problem from a compliance perspective. When an agentic system makes independent decisions in high-risk domains, loan approvals, medical diagnostics, hiring recommendations, you need robust accountability mechanisms. The EU AI Act requires explainability, human oversight, and real-time monitoring. You can't just let an agent approve a loan or reject a job candidate without being able to explain why, and without having humans in the loop. That's the governance frontier we're entering.
Right. So these systems need to be transparent and accountable, not just efficient. What does that actually look like in practice? How does an organization structure governance around agentic AI systems?
That's where the concept of an AI lead architect comes in, and it's becoming critical. These are senior technical leaders responsible for designing AI systems with governance embedded from the start. They're not retrofitting compliance, they're architecting it into the system design. This includes establishing clear decision boundaries for agents, designing explainability mechanisms so you can always understand why an agent made a particular choice, and building human oversight loops that are practical but robust.
So it's not just a legal compliance function, it's deeply integrated into how you build the system. Let's talk about risk assessment and documentation. The EU AI Act requires these. What does that entail?
This is one of the most tangible requirements. Organizations need to document their AI systems comprehensively. What problem does it solve? What data does it use? What are the potential harms? How are you mitigating those harms? How are you monitoring for unintended consequences? For high-risk systems, this documentation has to be granular and ongoing. It's not a one-time box-ticking exercise. You're doing real-time monitoring and logging, keeping audit trails of decisions made by your AI systems. If a customer or regulator challenges a decision, you need to be able to explain it with documentation.
That sounds resource-intensive. I imagine organizations need to think about staffing and capabilities. What kind of maturity assessment do enterprises need to conduct?
Good point. Organizations should be conducting an AI maturity assessment right now, honestly evaluating where they stand on governance, technical infrastructure, and organizational readiness. Some key dimensions. Do you have clear ownership and accountability for AI systems? Do you have data governance frameworks in place? Can you trace data lineage and quality? Do you have people with expertise in AI governance and compliance? Do you have the technical infrastructure for monitoring and logging? Most enterprises find themselves scattered across the maturity spectrum, maybe advanced in one area, immature in another.
So what would you advise an organization to do if they're currently underprepared? What should be their first steps?
Start with an honest inventory. Map your existing AI systems. What are they doing? Where are they deployed? Who's responsible? What data do they use? Identify which of your systems fall into the 8 high-risk categories under the EU AI Act. Then, prioritize. Focus first on the systems that have the highest impact on fundamental rights or that you're most uncertain about. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. Build governance incrementally, but deliberately. And crucially, get executive sponsorship. This isn't a compliance department problem, it's a business transformation. You need leadership buy-in because you're going to be restructuring workflows and decision-making processes.
That's smart. You're essentially saying governance isn't a bolt-on, it's foundational. Let me ask about the third-party audit requirement. The EU AI Act mentions conformity assessment and third-party audits. How does that factor in?
For high-risk systems, conformity assessment is mandatory. Organizations either conduct self-assessments or bring in third-party auditors to verify compliance. This is where governance frameworks become critical because auditors will review your documentation, your processes, your monitoring mechanisms. They're looking for evidence that you've thought through risks, that you're managing them, that you can demonstrate control. The organizations that are going to come out ahead are those building governance frameworks now, frameworks that can be audited and that demonstrate continuous improvement.
So, beyond just legal compliance, there's competitive advantage here. Organizations that get governance right early will have stronger systems, better customer trust, and probably fewer regulatory headaches. Is that fair?
Absolutely fair. Enterprises that view 2026 as a compliance deadline are going to scramble. Enterprises that view it as an opportunity to build better AI systems, more transparent, more accountable, more trustworthy, are going to gain a real advantage. Customers, partners, and regulators increasingly value organizations that can demonstrate strong AI governance. It becomes a competitive differentiator.
That's a great perspective. Sam, one final question. If someone listening is in Rotterdam or another European hub and they're responsible for AI strategy, what's the single most important action they should take in the next 30 days?
Schedule an honest conversation with your technical leadership and compliance teams. Agree on your baseline, where you stand today on governance readiness. Don't oversell your maturity. Be realistic. Then draft a roadmap. What needs to happen between now and August 2026? What are your high-risk systems? How will you bring them into compliance? Who owns each piece? That roadmap becomes your North Star. You don't need to be perfect, but you need to be intentional and you need to be moving.
Sound advice. Sam, thanks for walking through this with us. Listeners, if you want to dive deeper into EU AI Act governance, agentic AI implementation, and compliance strategies, head over to etherlink.ai. We've got a comprehensive article covering everything we discussed today, including frameworks, timelines, and actionable steps. This has been EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and thanks for listening.